When it comes to games that do the spooky theme well without actually being scary, sign me up for the Ghosts and Goblins series with everybody's favorite boxer-clad knight, Arthur. While this isn't Capcom's most popular series, it's definitely still one of the series that they're well known for. Funny enough, around this time Capcom actually had a ton of other games with medieval-inspired themes. There was Black Tiger, Magic Sword, King of Dragons, Knights of the Round, and heck, even the Dungeons and Dragons games they made. And yet, to this day, the Ghosts and Goblins series has really distinguished itself from the pack, and I believe this is for two main reasons. The first is that these games have a lot of charm and charisma. For starters, Arthur is a knight, but he's not depicted as seriously as knights typically are though, is he? I mean, just look at the way this guy runs. You can tell that Capcom was trying to make him goofy. The way he jumps like an Olympic hurdler, he's got red hair, nothing wrong with that, right? And sure, it's a generic save the princess story, but the way she's kidnapped while they're seemingly on a date is pretty funny. However, despite all these quirky design choices, these games can be brutally difficult, which would be the second reason this series sticks out to gamers. Yes, even though these games came out during a time when games being challenging was the norm, these feel extra tough. Personally, I've played all these games so much that I don't feel that way myself, but it might just be because I've had so much practice. But here's the thing, I actually think the challenge of the games ties into the quirky design beautifully, and here's why. One of the stereotypes about knights is that they're known for their bravery, right? Arthur has a tall task set ahead of him, having to get past all these different ghouls and ghosts, as do you, the player, with a challenging game. Arthur runs like a goof, jumps like a goof, and frantically uses his weapons to ward off all the enemies. Despite being overwhelmed and outmatched, he's still just a lovable goofball trying his darndest. Heck, even when he loses his suit of armor, he still pushes on, one step short of going full commando in nothing but his strawberry patterned boxers. Yes, those are strawberries on there. Not to mention, he can get transformed into a baby, old guy with a cane, or even a duck, forcing you to hobble around momentarily trying to survive until you transform back. He's clearly in over his head, and that's exactly how you, the player, will feel as you learn the ropes of the game. But with time, you'll grow to love Arthur's quirks and get better at using his skill set to maneuver through the stages so long as you have the right amount of determination to continue on. One nice thing about these games is that for the most part they give you unlimited continues, or at the very least they are very generous with continues. For example, Super Ghouls and Ghosts has seemingly unlimited continues, but I actually found out the hard way that you can run out. And it happened to me on the very last stage of my second run through the game. I really enjoyed that moment. Now, what do I mean by second run through the game? Well, one of the things that contributes to this game's difficulty and notoriety is that you have to run through the entire game twice, using a special weapon to defeat the final boss during the second time you fight him, which then reveals the true final boss. Jumping into the games themselves, I want to first take a look at the original arcade version of Ghosts and Goblins, which I'm playing via the Capcom Generations release for Sega Saturn. Now, typically when people think of this game, they think of the NES version, but I'm telling you, this version is a lot better. Besides having a lot more detail, it plays cleaner and doesn't have a lot of the janky, glitchy feeling hiccups in the NES port. It feels like what the NES game was trying to be, and that's because it is. I like the way he runs in this one. He's got almost no bounce to his step, like he has to go to the bathroom or something, and yes, my money would be on number 2. Now would probably be a good time to mention the weapons. After all, having the right weapon can make all the difference in this game. You typically want to have the dagger as your weapon of choice, and you definitely will get so attached to using certain weapons that accidentally picking up a different weapon can feel far worse than dying. In fact, you may even find yourself intentionally dying in order to avoid picking up certain weapons. You gotta just find the weapon that works for you and ride it for all it's worth. Okay, let's jump to the next game in the series, Ghouls and Ghosts, and again I'm playing the arcade version via the Capcom Generations release for Sega Saturn, though I do like the Genesis version as well due to how responsive and zippy it feels. Perhaps the biggest change in this game is that you can now throw your weapon up, which is extremely useful. Besides that, you get a lot of the same creative level design seen throughout the series, but now with even more detail being a later game, and I think this is where the series really started started to have gorgeous looking games. I love the way this game uses color, and leave it to Capcom, those talented sons of guns, to have such detailed sprite work and animation. Here's the thing, the key to a difficult game incentivizing a player to keep playing is to properly reward them for making progress. These games handle this brilliantly by rewarding you with completely new stage art and design every time you reach a checkpoint or complete a stage, which also serve as checkpoints. Because so much work was put into making every single new area so distinct and well themed, it's easy to fall into a cycle of always wanting to try to make it to just one more checkpoint. And yes, the stage will also sometimes change quite a bit even before you reach the next checkpoint or stage. The way everything transitions from one area to another is quite clever, and clearly Capcom must have thought so themselves by constantly showing you the overall map screen of where you are and how everything is all connected. And yes, this is a pretty signature feature of the series as well. Alright, last on the list we have Super Ghouls and Ghosts, originally released for the Super Nintendo and not in the arcades like the two previous games. By the way, this game is also on this same Capcom Generations release that I keep mentioning, and even removes some of the slowdown that you'll find in the Super Nintendo version. Would you believe that I'm a fan? The ability to throw your weapon up is now gone from this game, which definitely pisses some fans off, but luckily they did replace it with something else cool. That's right, one of the greatest maneuvers in all of gaming, the double jump. You can only jump once in real life, but these are video games, so why not? Mastering this double jump is key in this game because once you commit to each jump, you are locked into where you're going. And sure, you can potentially course correct your first jump with that subsequent double jump, but if you get caught screwing around, you can die in a hurry. This game also introduced powered up functions to each weapon with the green suit, in addition to the special abilities introduced in the previous games with the gold suit, by charging up a meter on the bottom of the screen. Despite being released on the Super Nintendo, this game still looks like a quality arcade title of the time, which is especially impressive since it was released so early in the Super Nintendo's life cycle. I really love all three of these games, and it's probably one of my favorite video game series there is. I should mention that there are tons of ports of these games, and it's actually pretty interesting to compare some of them, though for my money the versions that I've played in this video are a great way to go. There was also a game released on the PSP later on, but that one is a lot more open-ended, and I tend to think of it as a separate thing from the original games. Of course, I'd love to hear what all of you think of this series, but in the interest of fun, I'm going to ask you all a different question as well. Because people get the names of these games mixed up all the time with the different words that start with G, I thought we could all come up with our own goofy names. For example, mine would be Gargoyles and Garfunkles. So if you think of something funny, be sure to share it. But whatever your thoughts may be sure to leave them down below, and I will see ya in the next video.
He's the Retro Bird, yeah, and he's talking about me.